Hi, this is Andrea Adams-Miller. I actually going to spend a little time today talking about the desire to be authentic versus the tendency to overshare. So, authenticity versus oversharing. It recently came to my attention that I have a tendency to overshare, although I have the full desire to just be authentic and to be me. So I started looking and researching into why people tend to overshare and why other people feel that information is oversharing because there's a fine line between the two. So, what I found is that people who tend to overshare are often troubled with unresolved issues, both from the past and the present. For example, maybe in their childhood they didn't feel heard, or in their present life they don't feel heard. Maybe they're unhappy in their work, or they feel limited by the people that they're around, their friends, or their family, or their coworkers, or their boss. Awesome. Apparently, I just felt like saying the word awesome. Often, they're afraid to share. They're afraid that they'll be minimized or rejected or talked down to or led to feel stupid or unimportant. And so I started really looking at that. What is it about myself that other people may decide that I'm authentic, and other people think that I overshare. And I will, in a moment, talk about what I learned about other people. But I wanted to really look at myself and what I think about myself. And I would say that there is validation on both sides, that I am authentic and that I tend to overshare. So some of that comes from being I'm too little or I'm too much. And that comes from a feeling of doubt and lack of self confidence. I do know that when I was younger, I felt minimized and felt like I wasn't allowed to have a voice the way that I would have liked to have. So for me, I'm probably seeking outside validation for the things that I think and that I feel. So, in doing more research about this, I found that when people pull away, so like if someone in their world is pulling away, so not like if I'm pulling away, but in my world, if someone pulls away from me, or if they're distant, or they're busy, or so it doesn't have to be a negative thing. Sometimes pulling away can be seen as negative, and in other situations, they're not actually pulling away on purpose. They're just distracted or they're busy. So the person, like me, may tend to overshare more as the person wants to know how to process their world. So they're having a difficult time, and when I say difficult, it doesn't mean have to be hard or challenging or upsetting. It just means that they need somebody else to help them make some decisions and to process the information. So it's not positive or negative. Sometimes it can be either one, and sometimes it's neither one. But they're looking for support and guidance, as well as empathy and love to help them process the information. So, especially when the issue is limited to being addressed with only one person. So, let's say that someone is in conflict with a parent or a child or a boss or a coworker or a friend, even, they may even seek further information and share even more because because one of the people might not want to address the issue. So if there's avoidance, denial, or they're busy or they're not present, or if the person who wants to talk about it is afraid to talk about it and doesn't bring it up, so they have where they're feeling withdrawn or they're hiding information. And again, it doesn't mean that they're hiding anything negative or positive. It just means that they're just not revealing the information to the person for whatever reason they feel uncomfortable doing it. So a lot of times, this information comes out as far as considering somebody's being authentic or oversharing that really doesn't have to do with anything that's overly dramatic or anything that's overly stimulating, but rather just stuff that people take issue with sharing or feel uncomfortable about addressing with someone. Um, So when they feel like there's going to be a contrast or a difference of opinion or of a fear of a reaction, that person may not want to address it with the individual for which that they want to bring something up, but may instead then bring that up with a third party. So there's pros and cons to sharing and oversharing. So my personal belief is in sharing that I've kind of always believed that if I share a lot, that I'm really clear on who just loves me for me. This is who I am, raw and uncensored. This is me. At the same time, I always would joke that I would say I could totally run for president because if people wanted to pull skeletons out of my closet, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that. All right, yeah, we already knew that." So nobody would really care. So there's nothing more to pull out. Everybody already knows everything. So there's no secrets here. So you know, move along, nothing to see. But the challenge is when you share about you, other people in your world might accidentally be shared about as well. So, for example, let's say you're sharing an office with multiple cubicles with somebody, and you say to people in your world, you say, "Oh, it was so nice this week. I got to have the office all to myself." Well, invariably, in saying that you had the office to yourself, the people that you're talking to may know the other people in your office, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, was it Bob at work this week? Oh, I thought Susie was working all week." And now all of a sudden there's some kind of a perception of where Bob or Susie was. Were they sick? Were they off? Were they not? Were they where they weren't supposed to be? Did they not go on a trip they were supposed to do? There's just all these different theories that come up, and the people may ask or may not ask. And so maybe they do ask, and you say, "Oh, well, Susie didn't come to the office because she worked from home," or maybe you're like, "Well, I don't know where Susie was," or like, "Oh, I don't know, she went on vacation." And then in saying that, maybe that Susie didn't share or want to share where she was with other people. So now, incidentally, you accidentally overshared about another person's life when you were only trying to share about your own, but other people are in your world. So then that becomes challenging where, like, if Susie comes to you and, like, why did you tell, so and so I wasn't here? Well, that was never your intention. You were talking about yourself, but they're in your world. So it's really based on the perceptions of the people who are listening and on the people who you're around and how they feel about what's shared about them. At the same time, when somebody shares something that's burdensome, now think about that. If somebody shares something with you that is burdensome to you, you're worried about them, or it makes you worried about yourself or what's going on in your world, you may want to share that with someone. And it's very difficult to filter what information or who you're talking about. And even though you may try to filter all the who, what, where, when, why, how, it's really challenging sometimes. And people who know your world really well probably are going to figure out who you're talking about, even if you try to be vague or make it sound more like an analogy or a story or use a different sex of a person or a different name, or you say, "Well, I have a friend who," people can figure that out. And at the same time, when something is bothering you and you need to filter the information to make your world work, it's very challenging to think how to put that together because you deserve to be able to process that information, and on the other hand, the other person deserves for their information to be private as well. So how do you address that fine line? So if you're upset about something in your world or concerned how things are going, you need to find someone to confide in that might be of assistance to you. And this is really difficult sometimes because how do we determine who is trustworthy and who is not when sharing? So, what I have learned about myself is I confide in people that I believe are trustworthy. And then those people are not always trustworthy, or they believe they're trustworthy and then they repeat information thinking that they're going to help. And instead of helping, it actually hurt because now that other person that you were sharing about is like, "Oh my God, you shared blah, blah, blah," even though you may not have shared their name, shared the situation, or whatever. Um, the third party either figured it out or made an assumption. And it could be really funny both ways because you could have not been talking about that person at all, or you actually could have. And then now your trust has been broken. Interestingly enough, I'm often commended for my authenticity. People say, "Oh my God, I love you, Andrea. I love you because you're so real. You are just as you are. You show up in the world and you are just very present, and that's who you are. And people love me for being me." And at the same time, I get a lot of pushback from people who think that all things must be quiet or most things should be kept quiet. And that's a real challenge for me because I'm someone who decides to live very openly. And when you have someone in your world who doesn't choose to live that way, how do you find that balance so that you're respectful of them and yet respectful of yourself? So for me, I feel like I'm important and valuable enough that I can be so raw and uncensored and be my weird self and my goofy self, and yet my fabulous, amazing, brilliant, professional self. I have many sides to me. I'm all of that, and I usually know when to put on the correct face in the right situation. And of course, there's always the after hours, after business when you're around people. When do you share? When do you not share? When is it appropriate? When is it not? And everybody has a different perception of what is okay. Everyone has a different perception of what is okay. Interestingly enough, who decides whose point of view is the right one? That's where it gets challenging. So for me, I feel like I'm important and valuable enough that the people in my world will love me regardless of who I am, what I do, what I might have said, or how I show up in the world, that they'll still think I'm awesome and still choose to love me and still work with me. Those people are my friends and my clients. Those other people probably aren't my friends or my clients. They have too many rigid rules or too many things going on. And at the same time, there are people that fall along those lines that I really like and that I really want to work with. So, how do I be me and respect them? So, where's that fine line for authenticity and oversharing? So, so like I said, I share business with people and projects and dreams and events with people who have a difference of opinion of what is acceptable. So I have recently found myself attempting to be more obscure, more vague, and more absent of chatter. And maybe this is the right way to be. And at the same time, I have to question, am I the one that needs to change? Or is it the people in my world maybe need to be more open minded about what's restrictive in their world and what they can and cannot talk about? So is it just a me thing or is it a world thing? So I would say it's both. Maybe it's both. And there maybe if there's a compromise of both, the world would be a better place overall because we would learn how to communicate together and we would be more open and we would be more candid and we wouldn't have to worry about what people think because what people think shouldn't necessarily matter. And at the same time, yes, sometimes what other people think does matter. It depends on the situation or the place, the job, the client, so on and so forth. There's so many variables, what's right or wrong. And again, when you work with, I work at events with, hundreds of people. If one person is offended by something, does that mean I'm wrong? Or does that mean that person just has a difference of opinion? And so maybe what I've said or done isn't right or wrong. It just was uncomfortable in that person's eyes. Or maybe only right or wrong in that one person's eyes, and everybody else thought it was great or grand. Often what happens is the other people don't say that, oh, that was great or grand. They only hear the complaint. And so then you don't know what to base it on or where that should be. And those are the challenges that come up for all of us. So I'd really love to know your thoughts on the matter. What is the difference to you in authenticity and oversharing? And post them here below on the social media, respond to the article that you've seen, respond to this video, and let me know what you think and where do you stand with either yourself in authenticity or oversharing, or even your opinion of me. Hey, I totally am happy to hear other people's opinions about what they think I should or should not do, because ultimately it's up to me to feel confident in myself and to either accept or reject any of the opinions or ideas that come across. I'm open to all of them. Basically, what I want to do is enroll you in a conversation about what is the best way to engage in those situations so that we can honor self and honor the people around us that we love and work with. All right. Have a great night. This is Andrea Adams-Miller, and we'll talk with you later. Bye.